Hey, welcome to everybody to another SBA Live. We are Full Circle Aftercare, and I'm Matt. I'm the owner of Full Circle Aftercare, and Nikki. You want to introduce yourself, Nikki?
Yes, I'm Nikki Schmutz. I'm Director of Operations at Full Circle, and passionate about everything we do here to help all families who are in need of help after losing a loved one. So anybody who works with us works with me every single day.
Yeah, Nikki is truly amazing, and everyone loves her. So she's really becoming the face of the company. And I want to thank all the comments. I've received a lot of feedback from our last show about probate. Having CJ on, a lot of people really found that information useful. So we might have to have him on again and talk a little bit more about some of those estate issues. Any information we can get out to families or to businesses to help them, that's what we want to do.
And he's so engaging. I love listening to CJ, and I've heard him a lot of times. So I know everyone loved to see him.
Absolutely. Well, today is a really exciting program. So today we are talking. That is not actually the title of what we're
Oh,
doing.
look at that.
We're talking about what is aftercare, right? And how does a funeral home and a hospice, how would they use aftercare to help them grow? Why is it a good business decision to have aftercare? So what is it? Is it a good business decision? And then if you are going to have aftercare, how do you leverage that to grow your business? Because if it's not helping grow your business, you should not be doing aftercare.
Absolutely true.
Awesome. So, what is aftercare, Nikki?
Aftercare could be a lot of things depending who you ask, but in my time here at Full Circle, it is anything extra provided to the families after they've lost their loved one through hospice or a funeral home. How you define that extra makes the big difference. So it can be things like offering grief support, estate settling assistance, like what we do, cards or texts, any type of follow up. And a lot of funeral homes will throw pre-need into that mix as well.
Yeah. So, I ask this question all the time in conventions or when I see people, small business owners, funeral home managers, and I say, "What are you doing for aftercare?" And the number one response I get is, "Ugh, not enough." Right? And they don't really know what more they can do. They just feel this big lack. Um, Foundation partners shared with me a statistic where they sent out about 50,000 surveys and they asked all these families, what can we do better? And the number one response was, we need more support after the funeral's over. So they're talking about aftercare. The family does not want to be dropped, right? And so whether it's reaching out to the family and kind of pushing, or it's that personal service-based aftercare, which is what we do, it's needed for families.
And I also would like to add that we work also in a hospice space as well as funeral home. And aftercare is a very new term to hospice. It's not something that has ever been introduced until us. So we can use that interchangeably with bereavement aftercare.
Yes. Yeah, good point. Yeah, because hospices, aftercare, nobody's heard that term over there. And, they think of bereavement, but this is a way to augment bereavement because I'm looking for a piece of paper. Most bereavement programs for a lot of hospices are, a piece of paper stapled, sent out once or a couple times over the 13 months, and that's bereavement. And there's a lot more to following up and serving those families than sending out a little mailer here and there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, differentiation.
Differentiation, right?
Yes.
It is a big deal. People don't know that you're different if they can't understand how you're different, right? So otherwise, if you're not really different from the competition, it is what it is, right? So, if there's not a lot of difference between Sierra Mist and Sprite, I don't really care which one I get. I just want something along those lines. And the same thing will go with funeral home and hospice. Hospice is hospice is hospice. I saw a survey once in one of the hospice magazines, something along the lines of like almost over 90% of families couldn't name their hospice company that served their loved one within 3 months of the passing. They
We
don't know the difference of the company. Hospice is hospice.
Yes, and I can also throw in, because I work on the ground level every day, many families don't realize that their care center is different from the hospice, that service that's being provided. There's a
Right.
few states where it happens a little differently, but most states, it's a separate service that comes in, and they think it's just the facility.
Right. And the same thing with funeral homes. If I don't care about a big funeral, or I don't care about the location or the nice chapel that a funeral home has, I just need mom or dad cremated. I don't really care what funeral home does it. I don't understand the difference enough to do it, right? And so if I don't care that, what's my deciding factor? It's price, right? And suddenly it's a commoditized business, and all I'm doing is price shopping as I'm looking for a funeral home or hospice. Well, hospice, there is no price, but definitely for a funeral home, right? Price shopping, and it becomes a race to the bottom. All the funeral homes are doing is cutting price, which then they have to cut services. And that is not what we want. We want differentiation for brand. I think a good example for this is one of our clients down in Texas, rural client. He has his direct cremation prices at $18.99, and he had a direct competitor come in, or sorry, and like an online cremation service come in at $9.99. And then his competitor dropped his direct cremation price to $8.99, right? And all of a sudden you saw this thing. And I was like, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm not dropping. So people would call in, they would have these price shoppers, and they'd be like, well, how much is your direct cremation? It's $18.99. What? You're double? You're double what everyone else is? How can you justify that? Well, I'd love to tell you, because there is a difference. And people were like, okay, I want to hear this. And he'd explain, well, we make sure that all of our widows get all their benefits. We make sure every account is closed. We make sure our families are truly taken care of, but not only the dignity of taking care of the body, but also taking care of the family. You might not want services from us, but that's why we charge more. He's like, I won 70, 80% of those price shoppers being double what my competition was. And so I think that's a good point. Like, look, if people only shop by price, then nobody would drive a Mercedes. No one would drive a BMW. No one would drive a Lexus, right? They wouldn't. People want value, and they need to see why you're different. Why is there value there to pay? What justifies that cost?
And I think the biggest piece of that is you as a business owner has to really jump in and educate every person you talk to about what you offer.
Right. So doing something different is a great place, and the big place is aftercare. I say this because aftercare is something that the family never expects. They think about the funeral home in dealing with the body. They think about the hospice in, a little bit extra services for their caretaker, and kind of walking through that death process. They don't expect any help afterwards. And when you come in with this level of expectation and your met expectations, you're not really wowed. But if you come in with this level of expectations, and then when everything's done, you get a phone call saying, hey, we know what you're struggling with next. We're going to help you with it. Wow. That really changes that whole perception of like, oh, okay, I didn't expect the funeral home to do this for me. They're still here for me. They really do care about me.
We
Right?
see it all the time. Families, they're like, oh, I don't think I really need your service. And then we get them to set an appointment, and we go through the appointment, and they say, oh my gosh, I didn't even know half of what we went through today. I didn't know that was something I even needed to address. And it reflects as being a very, very positive experience at the end of their experience with the funeral home or hospice.
Right. Now, the one thing I would caution on differentiation, Well, I'm a big proponent of all types of aftercare, right? All types of bereavement. Um, Cards and texts are not a differentiator, right? And if you try to use that as a differentiator, like, hey, we'll send you a card at Christmas, that feels self-serving. Also, grief is a tricky one.
Yes.
So there's certain ways to serve with grief that's helpful, but oftentimes people are like, well, I don't feel like I need the grief resources, and so they discount it. And so, like you could say, it's hard for a hospice to differentiate through bereavement. That's where I'm kind of going with the grief side. Hey, we offer bereavement. Well, so does everyone else, and I might not feel like I need bereavement right now. So augmenting the bereavement where it's more all-encompassing, that's where it becomes more of a differentiation.
Absolutely. And I think this will be on our next slide. There are ways to put that out there. We can differentiate. The website is a great way because people are online, they're getting on Google, they're clicking on the website link to go and look at your list of services and what you offer.
Yeah. If you are providing a robust aftercare service and you don't have that on your website, fix that today, right? Either call up someone who knows how to put that on or call your website provider and ask them to add something. Let me give you a quick story on this. So I have all these estate specialists helping families right out here. One of them comes to me and says, I have a woman who wants to talk to the owner. Now she's thinking she's talking to the owner of the funeral home, but that's fine. She passes to me. I said, hey, how can I help you? And she goes, well, let me tell you your story. So turns out she's the mayor of the town. Very influential, right? So this is the type of business we want, right? We want influencers. So she's like, I was trying to decide which funeral home to use. And I looked at your website, and then I looked at the other website, and I couldn't see any difference. And so then I called you, and I called them, and it was about the same price, and I couldn't hear of any difference. And the only reason why I chose your funeral home was because you were a little bit closer to my aunt. She goes, however, this aftercare service has been incredible, and helping our families has been, or helping my family wrap this stuff up has been totally unexpected and so helpful. She goes, why didn't you tell me? When you went to the website, you should have put that front and center. We're going to still help you after the funeral home. It wouldn't have been a question. I would have chose you first. I'm so glad I chose you because I wouldn't have got this service elsewhere. That exact piece, I called the funeral home owner and I was like, you need to be telling the community that you're doing this for them because you will win more at-need cases.
Absolutely. People don't know if someone doesn't tell them, if they've never been through it before. They don't know all the different things they need. You have to let them know.
Okay, perfect. We got a comment from Greg Brown about the presentation not being on the Google link. Erin, can you help with that?
I just sent him a message while we were talking.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So I hope you guys can see the presentation that I'm seeing.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. All right. What's some other examples of websites that have been effective that you've seen?
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to Tukios because we have some pretty big clients that use Tukios and they have created a drop down. So if one of our funeral home clients uses Tukios, they can actually ask them to put the aftercare drop down on their website. It'd be super easy. And if you're our client already, then you have a branded video that's kind of like an explainer of what we do. So that is by far, if you're using Tukios, super easy to accomplish. But I've seen a lot of other great websites too. Let me flip to the next screen here. Our partners at Harrell Funeral Home have dedicated a lot of time on their website to make sure their families understand.
I love their website and I love the time they take on this. I mean, we obviously can't go to the website here on this presentation format, but go to their website, Harrell Funeral Home, harrellfuneralhomes.com. Sorry, homes. They have a whole explanation of everything that their aftercare program does for families and why it's needed, and then testimonials of it. And it's front and center. When you're going, you see the different resources right there, and they have a lot of people click on it, and they do a lot of things right.
Yes.
But since we've worked with them, I just see every single year their numbers go up and up and up and up. And they have a lot of big corporations around them, but they're winning as an independent funeral home because they show the community why they are different and what's different and how they're differentiated.
Absolutely. They are amazing. We've worked with them a lot of years. And give a shout out to Jason and Starlyn and Wade and Doug and everybody. You guys are
I'm pretty
great.
sure it was Starlyn that did the website.
Yes.
She's brilliant.
Yes. We also have some hospices who have our information on their website.
Yes.
Yes. So this one is a little bit outdated. It's got a really old staff picture, but all of the information is there, and it details exactly what we do for the hospice families. So we have a few hospices that go ahead and put an aftercare on their benefit, the explanation of what they offer.
Right. That was when we had 7 employees. We now have 51. So yeah, it's a little outdated. But maybe they don't want a picture that big.
Yeah, it won't fit. So we'd have to pick and choose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So along with website, though, do you have anything to add about website?
No, yeah, just I would say I have had hospice families call us and say, as we were looking at hospices, one of the reasons that we chose them is we saw that this service would be there. And we were really stressed. My mom never did the finances. My dad was always the one in charge of that, and he had dementia. And so knowing that that was part of the support system with this hospice helped us choose that hospice because we could see it kind of represented to us that you go the extra mile in all senses.
Yes. And Aaron, just let me know that should be fixed now. So if you still can't see, then let us know. So
yes, thanks for letting us know.
Yes. Also differentiated in your ad campaigns. I mean, hospices, they all have marketers. You guys are amazing at getting out there, getting into your community, and you have so many great ad campaigns.
Yes. So I used to go out with marketers. I've done it several times where I go out with hospice marketers and just to kind of experience what they're like, or their liaisons, as they like to call them. And I remember one time we're sitting for a discharge planner for a hospital, and we're waiting for her to get done with the meeting. And we're sitting in this hallway, and then all of a sudden, here comes another hospice marketer, and then behind us, another one. And by the time she got out of her meeting, there were 5 of us there. And she's like, oh, okay, she brought us in. And while we're talking, one guy's like, look, I'm not going to wait in this line. Here's some cookies or an apple or something. Don't forget to do apple something hospice, right? Or whatever it was. And I was like, this is ridiculous. She's getting bombarded. And every single person's message was, do you have a family for us? Right.
Yeah.
And whether it's an ad campaign at a newspaper, right, in a print or an in-person visit like that, that's not the way you want to be remembered. Like, just give me something. So one thing I help my hospices do is I have them go back and read the testimonials we get. So we get feedback from over 95% of the families that are sent to us, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And rather than going in and saying, hey, do you have another family for me? They'll go in and say, hey, do you remember Peggy? Oh my gosh, we love serving her. She just passed away, and her daughter left this comment with our team. Can I read it to you? Wow, that's totally different, because now I say, oh, that hospice is focused on patients. They're not just asking me for another number. And that is a way to differentiate, to give testimonials. Same thing, funeral homes, going out to hospices, right? Harold does this. They go out to hospices. Hey, look at what we're able to do with this family. They didn't know they had these benefits, and our aftercare team came in and helped them with that. So we're able to provide better care to the surviving spouse who's disabled. Wow. You guys did that as a funeral home? You went that extra mile? Okay, then that is going to create a lot of loyalty, right?
Absolutely. And any of the hospices and funeral homes that we use are also the ones that are really, really great at doing some marketing. They also have some great social media posts and processes on how to get all that information out there so that their families and their other people in their community can see what they offer.
Yeah. So I think that there's a right way and a wrong way to do social media posts, right?
Yes.
So just saying, use us over and over again. Okay, testimonials are good, but if it's only testimonials, not so good. You want engagement. You want people to say, oh, that's interesting. You want to be teaching, right?
Yeah.
I loved one of our funeral homes. They did a whole ad campaign. You're not thinking about this, but we are,
That
right?
was that was great.
It was great. And
Yes.
they're like, when your loved one dies, don't rush and close the bank account right away, because a few things have to happen. You don't want to freeze that account. You're not thinking about this, but we are. We'll have a team dedicated to helping you with this. It was useful information that was interesting, and it made people engage with the post, right? Or this is how you claim the Social Security benefit, or this is what you do with the credit card. And we provided a lot of that information for them to use as tools within their marketing. And now people, especially the senior community, oh, I didn't know about that benefit, or oh, I didn't know that was available. And as they're entering and discussing it, well, then now the social media posts companies are saying, oh, you guys post interesting content. We're going to push that to more people. We're going to allow more people to see it because it gets more engagement. And
Yes.
that's what you want, right? Social media posts about aftercare get high engagement, especially if they're teaching posts and helping them, learn something they didn't know that's helpful to them.
Exactly. I'm going to share some of the posts that we have. Is if you're doing an amazing aftercare program, you got to let people know. You should announce it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I love that one. The attention, that brought my attention, right?
Yeah.
Family feedback, really good. It's calm. It's easy, but it's meaty. It's not just I give them a 5-star review, right? And then I really like that last one, showing, hey, here's all the different aspects of caring for our families. These are the things we're doing for them in 5 different areas. Now that tells me you guys are experts. You go the extra mile. You've thought this through. This isn't haphazardly put together. Aftercare is no longer an afterthought. You are truly serving your families. I trust that funeral home now.
Absolutely. Or hospice. So
Or
having all of this on their social media is a great way to get some exposure. And as far as hospice, that's just an addition to what you offer, which is a differentiator. But for funeral homes, it can also help with some pre-need.
Right. You're exactly right. I always talk about this. It's like the family comes to the funeral home on probably the worst day of their life, or at least one of the worst days of their life, right?
Yes.
And they are just lost. And luckily, they have these amazing, caring funeral directors who pick them up and carry them through this process. And it's service, 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 service. And then if that gets done and they're by the graveside, they say goodbye, and they don't hear a word from the funeral home until all of a sudden a big sales call. Hey, do you want to buy some pre-need? Man, that feels like a slap in the face. It feels so disconnected from the service that they've been used to that it's jarring. And oftentimes it kind of discredits, like, oh, you guys just want more money from me.
Yeah.
Whereas if instead pre-need is introduced in a way of, hey, the funeral director picks you up and serve. When they're done, the estate specialist comes in and says, hey, I know you're dealing with more things. Let me help you with that. Serve. Oh, by the way, here's something else that a lot of families are doing to protect and kind of gift for their family. Do you want more information about that? Well, sure. Right. And now your pre-need agent isn't just haphazardly calling anyone. They know who to reach out to and how to reach out to them. And they're saying, hey, Kathy said you had some questions. How can I help you? That feels more in line with the service that they've been getting since the beginning, rather than I want to tell you about pre-need. So it really can bridge that gap from service to service.
And when we're on the phone with families, a lot of times our first phone call is almost an hour, and we're still going to be helping them after that too. But when we have gotten to that point in our phone call where we say, okay, now we're going to talk about you for a minute as the surviving family member. Do you have your funeral plan in place? Do you need to update your will? Do you need to do all this? But we approach it in an educational way. There are no sales tactics applied at all. So it's a safe place for them to ask questions, for them to learn a little bit, so that they're going to be more receptive when the funeral home does reach out.
And to be clear, I don't think Aftercare is a great place to sell pre-need. I think there's too many funeral homes who've tried to combine the two of them. In fact, the person who my old business partner, right? He owned a pre-need company, and he's like, I have this business idea. This business was not my idea. And he said, our biggest problem is our pre-need agents are trying to do our aftercare, and it's not working because the pre-need agent is trying to rush to get to the pre-need sale, right?
Yeah.
And the family knows that. They feel that. And he's like, it works when it works, but most time it doesn't. And a lot of times they even had pre-need agents like, I'm never going to get a sale from them, so I'm not going to go serve them. If you separate out the two, where let the service people be service people, we would never sell we'd never sell pre-need. We don't sell anything to the family, right? No one in aftercare should be selling something to the family. Aftercare should be caring for the family, just serving them. And then introducing, like you said, introducing the concepts of pre-need or coming back is an important step to help grow the funeral home.
Absolutely. And I think it's great to provide that safe place to talk about it without feeling like they have to say yes or no today. So
yeah, absolutely. I feel like you don't have an agenda here, and I can just ask information, and whatever information they give us can be helpful to that pre-need agent, right? So for an example, we had a gentleman say to one of our estate specialists, I don't need pre-need, I'm a veteran. Right? Now our pre-need specialist was not there to sell them, so that's where they left it. But we let Heather know from the funeral home, hey, this is what this gentleman said to us. So she reached out and she's like, hey, I just got this feedback from our state specialist. You're a veteran. Thank you so much for our service. One of the saddest things we do here at the funeral home is have to tell families that the VA doesn't cover all their funeral expenses. What? What are you talking about? Well, then she was able to teach him about what is covered and what's not covered. When he had that information, he chose on his own to go ahead and buy a pre-need. Well, not just him and his wife and his brother, who was a Marine, and his brother's wife. So 4 pre-needs. And her basis back to me is like, I would never have been able to sell that family had I done any other marketing technique to them.
yeah.
But because it was a safe place within aftercare, where it was a teaching moment and not a service moment, we were able to understand the information, so I could meet him where he was at and serve his family. And he was grateful. He wanted to take care of his family. He thought they already were. How sad would he be to know I didn't take care of my family?
Yeah.
So that's why pre-need is important.
Yes, and that feeds right into our next slide, which is how to drive more referrals, which absolutely are those pre-need referrals, exactly like that story you shared.
Right, exactly, right. So we want pre-need referrals, we want at-need referrals, we want them coming back, right? So on our hospice side, if people don't understand why your hospice is different, how can they refer back to you? They're like, hospice was a good experience. Which hospice? I don't know. Right?
The one we were using.
whoever it was, whoever the doctor told us, right? Like, we want them not just to go have a positive experience for hospice. Like, we obviously want a positive experience because we want those CAP surveys, right? And I don't know if we have a slide about CAP surveys, but it's important on hospice because everything you do on hospice is serving the patient. But the next of kin is the one filling out that CAP survey and doing the word of mouth referrals.
Yeah.
And so, as it should be, all of your services on the patient, but that next of kin might have seen everything you did, or they might have only been there one day when the nurse and the dad was kind of fighting, and she has a bad taste in her mouth about hospice. So having something that's a service directly for that daughter or directly for that next of kin, what that does is that leaves a lasting impression, being like, oh, you're here to serve me too. I knew you were here for dad, but I didn't know you were here for me. Now I feel more inclined to do Google reviews, word of mouth referrals, go tell my doctor what a great experience it was with the hospice, right? Whatever those are, and fill out the CAP survey.
Absolutely. All of that is so, so important.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Do a little wrap up, and then we'll let people ask some questions. So
yeah, go ahead. You recap this.
Well, I think the biggest conclusion is, if you're offering such an amazing service in aftercare, you have to advertise that you offer it so that people can realize what the difference is, because they're not going to know. unless you do that. So there's all those places we talked about, websites, social media, any type of advertising. But this doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money either if you can't afford a marketer. If you just put something up every once in a while, that's better than nothing. I mean, if you just get your information out there, if you're involved in your community, make sure it comes up in conversations. It doesn't have to be a huge campaign. Now, we do have large funeral homes and hospices that do large marketing campaigns.
Right.
And those who do that, they really try and capitalize on gaining more referrals by sharing information. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, and I would tell stories, right? And if you don't have any stories, if you're using us and you don't have any stories, call us. We have lots of stories about your families,
Yes.
more than what's in those notes, right? And those stories are compelling. They're so compelling. When you hear about individual families who were just lost, and it's that young widow who I helped, who at the beginning of the call, her husband was military. She had no idea what she was going to do next. And I remember calling her and she's like, I'm afraid I'm going to get evicted. I have no money. Her landlord had come and said, if you can't pay rent, you might as well move out before I evict you. She was terrified.
Yeah.
And I remember at the end of our 2.5-hour call, I said, we had found money, we had set up Social Security benefits, we had done veterans benefits, we had done everything that was in there, and we kind of went the extra mile for her because of her situation. They even helped her with like food stamps and stuff, which she had no idea about. But I remember at the end of it, she's like, I can do this. And the difference in her voice at the beginning, just distraught of like, there is no way I can carry forward. And at the end of it going, yeah, I'm going to do that. And her hospice did that for her.
Yeah.
Right. Her hospice was there. So that pre-need marketer, or not pre-need marketer, but that the hospice liaison marketer, they need to be going and telling that story. Like, this is what we're able to do this for this family. And we're just so proud that we're able to serve families in this way. It really does make a difference. And when people hear those stories, they're like, yeah, you are going the extra mile for families.
Absolutely. And from personal experience, I can tell you the fear of not knowing how you're going to carry on into the future when you lose a provider, or even our elderly population, when a provider is lost, and maybe it was just Social Security, but the terror and the fear that is felt until they figure it out is immense. It's huge.
Yeah, as you lost your husband with small children, I can't imagine what you were thinking and feeling.
Yeah, luckily I figured it out, but now I'm here helping other people figure it out too.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah.
And I wish every single one of those widows had someone there to hold their hand through those next steps, so they weren't facing that alone. It feels a little bit better if someone's there by your side, being like, well, let's look at it. Let's figure out what there is there, and just being like, what am I going to do? Google? Let's see which one of these Google links is right and
All
which ones are wrong.
All 5,000 Google links that come up when you Google one question.
Exactly.
Yes. We got a bunch of purple hearts from Ange. Thank you, Ange. We see you and love you.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Well, I want to open it up for some questions. We're hoping that hospice and funeral homes are being able to look at this and maybe have questions because you don't know next steps, or maybe you've never even focused on aftercare at all, or you're aware that your bereavement program is lacking because there's just not enough time in the day. Yeah. So Matt, where would you say, let's take the hospice scenario. Where would you say for them to start first in the most effective way?
I think the most effective place is to start with the referral sources, right? You need to go tell the stories to the SNFs and the ALFs and the physicians who are sending patients your way, because they are hearing the same story from everyone. And I would go in there and be like, let's be honest. A hospice social worker is pretty great no matter who they work for. Hospice employees are pretty amazing.
Yes,
and a hospice nurse is a pretty amazing person no matter who they work for. So why would you send your patients to us rather than someone else? Put that back on them. Why do you want that represented? Because your recommendation, I know you're going to recommend multiple, I know that, but why should we be on one of those on that list? Let me tell you why. Because we have programs that look at hospice through the patient's eyes and not through spreadsheets like some big national hospice companies looking at them, right? And that's why, an example of that is this aftercare program we have, right? Here's the feedback we've had from families, and here's a story of someone we helped. Those are going to be compelling stories that they're going to say, oh man, if I were in that position, I would want your hospice. And that's going to make them more likely to recommend you. It has to be sincere, it has to be genuine. And that will move the needle.
Absolutely. And for funeral homes, I would say a lot of questions I get when I talk to people, we ask that question, what do you do for aftercare? And we get that standard reaction of, well, not enough. I wish I could do more. I think that making the decision to invest in doing more is really big. It can take change. It's a little scary to change pricing or to add things to your business. And this type of program is the type of thing that takes a little time for the community to see, but once they see it, they absolutely love it, and it pays off.
And when funeral homes decide to include it in their services, let me be clear, they should raise their price. And I know that's really, really hard to do, right? Oh man, I am in a price sensitive market. I don't want to raise my price $100 to include a robust aftercare service. Well, it works. People come. An example is we had an online direct cremation only. They had one price and they were the lowest in town. And that's what they were banking on. And I just begged them. I said, give one more option. I think that they were selling it for $6.95. And I said, just give them an option. You have your direct cremation price, do direct cremation plus that includes aftercare. And I think he sold it for another $300 more. So it's $6.95 to $9.95. And he's like, no one's going to choose that. It's 50% more. And guess what? 55% of the families picked that higher priced one. So yeah, you should charge for it. It should be part of your pricing structure so you're not eating it, but it's worth it. Families will see the value of going the extra mile for them, and it's a way to help differentiate.
Yeah. And for those who maybe have to work on saving some money or changing things around, and it takes longer than they want to try and implement a program, what advice would you give them for short term until they can get a larger program in place?
Great. So if you're working with us, then I would put on like one of our more soft programs, like an Abide program, which is more of like a consultation rather than a full service to families. You're not going to get quite as much bang out of it. Like people are going to be like, wow, you helped me so much, but are like, oh, that was nice. Right. And that's going to be with more within budget. If you're trying to do it on your own, then point them in a bunch of resources that are really going to help them. Right. What you don't want to have happen is you don't want to say, okay, I can't afford it, so I'm just going to overload my funeral directors more. Right. We don't want to do that. Also, be careful if you're going to do things like if you're in a hospice and you're looking at a budget, that's also very important. But make sure that you're not giving bad information. So we had a hospice one time. Social worker knew just enough information to be dangerous. And the advice she gave this family was true in 95% of the cases. But because she told them the wrong piece of information, they ended up having, I think it was like a $50,000 tax bill that they wouldn't normally have because they listened to what she said and moved forward. That should have been going to an attorney, and you need someone who knows what advice to give and then when to say you need to talk to an attorney about the situation before you make a move, or a financial planner or a tax advisor or something like that. So just be careful if you're trying to kind of like DIY it. There's a right way and a wrong way, and the right way is to DIY it in a way that brings value without putting too much liability on your team.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's all we have for today, and we're thankful for everybody who joined us and the great questions. And again, hi. If you have any questions, reach out to us, and we're going to be doing our next live on September 4th, and that'll be 1 p.m. Mountain Time, and that will be Why is Aftercare Needed, and maybe story time with Matt. So
I've already told all my stories.
No, you have so many. I think we can supply a bunch of them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, perfect.
Okay, well, thanks everybody. Thanks for joining, and thank you, Matt, for being here. And I'm always so happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Nikki. You're wonderful. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And you don't have to use us. You really don't. Like we'll be happy to share what has worked and what doesn't work on the marketing perspective, because we want you to grow your business.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.